Hello, Manoj Agrawal here from Banking Frontiers. Today I have with me the founder and CEO of the Yubi Group, Mr. Gaurav Kumar, who runs 5 companies in this Yubi Group. So Gaurav, welcome to this meeting.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So Gaurav, this lending business that your companies are into, what is the perspective that you have seen in the last couple of years that is really highlights of the transformation that is happening?
Thanks a lot. And when we started in 2020, right, we were visualizing where the entire banking ecosystem will be in say 2030 when we
Okay.
commenced our journey in 2020, and we said it will be largely led by a three-tier redesign, right, where you will see a lot of customers actually spending time on various storefronts, right, where they are actually fulfilling their need. Might be on e-commerce, might be on on UPI handle, might be on a aggregator, etc., etc.
Right.
And those platforms will become, or storefronts will become, a big enabler, right, of how a customer should actually experience banking products,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we said, what will not change in 2030? A loan will remain a loan, right? So we said any customer who's coming to a storefront, and depending on their need, what kind of financing they really require, they can actually call all the financing product below the storefront, right? And below the product layer, we thought we should have all the services architecture
Okay.
to say, how do we do KYC of a customer? How do we onboard a customer? How do we underwrite a customer? How do we enable collections, right? So we said this should be where the entire banking ecosystem should move, right? Where banks will now partner more and more with various storefronts, and banking as a service will get more and more embedded where the customer is, rather than customer coming to banks for financing need, right? So that was the entire genesis and overall design architecture
Sounds
when we
good.
started Yubi.
In the last couple of years, what are some of the most notable developments within UB enabling customer centric and regulator compliant transformation?
That's a great question. I think what we have always thought through is as a tech infrastructure, and a very significant tech infrastructure today in the country, all our clients are significantly regulated, right? So for
Yes.
us, compliance by design was the core principle as we started, right? So any product we build,
Mm-hmm.
the entire regulatory framework and compliance is actually set up as the enabling layer in the platform itself, right? So that no
Okay.
non-compliant transaction or no non-compliant onboarding can actually go through. That's point number one to your question. What we started seeing was, how do you get more and more full stack, where you are not looking at a siloed solution for a customer, where you are
Okay.
looking at a customer origination platform or a lending platform. So last 2 years, UB has become more and more full stack because our clients, which are largely banks and BFCs and others, are always horizontal, right? So
Okay. Okay.
we took a view and said how UB can be horizontal. So right from being their lending infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
right, to with our entire collections ecosystem with Spocto and UCollect, where we became now one of the India's largest collections infrastructure, uh,
Okay.
and then Acumen and Uverse, where we have invested significantly on AI 3 years back, right? On
Okay.
how does a customer underwrite better, how does a customer look at fraud better, how do a customer really move a risk from static risk to dynamic risk, right? That's the
From
power of
static
AI,
risk to dynamic risk.
right?
Okay.
Because and what I mean by that is that you used to largely look at a customer when you had to actually onboard or lend to a customer, and then you used to look at a customer where there was an early warning signal or a customer had defaulted,
Right.
right? Because a human-led process was not allowing you to do that, so you always got into sampling, saying, okay, look at my top risk cohort, and then look at what I can do for that customer
Uh-huh.
risk, right?
Uh-huh.
But now with AI, it's almost like n equal 1, right? So every customer, you are actually looking at that customer in a very personalized fashion, right? From how do you onboard them, how do you underwrite them, and then how do you risk manage them till the last rupee is paid back,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
So that's been the transformation and investment over the last 2 odd years, and we're seeing actually the same trend in our wealth platform, which
Okay.
is UB Markets and Aspero. We're India's largest online bonds platform today, right? And we
Okay.
are seeing a lot of digital adoption. We are seeing a lot of deepening of the debt markets, and thanks to SEBI, right, for enabling the entire ecosystem. through a pioneering provision of OBPP, online bonds platform, which
Okay.
has really transformed how bond markets are actually functioning over the last 2 years. So these have been, to my mind, the core over the last 2 years across the UB group.
So, what kind of synergies are there between these different roles, different organizations serving in a similar manner different markets?
That's a great question, and I think if you look at the common theme across all the companies, all of them are actually serving the same customer, right?
Yeah, could
But
be.
they might be serving different needs of a customer,
Right.
right? So UB today is playing a very critical role on customer onboarding, on lending infrastructure, all products across retail, corporate, trade, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Spock2 and UCollect brings in tremendous amount of synergy as far as collections is concerned, right? How does a bank collect better? How does a bank collect at a better cost structure? And how does a bank collect more compliant, right?
Right.
And UVerse and Acumen is playing a role on the entire underwriting and risk management for the customer. So the entire design is that once you take any part of UB inside your tech stack, our ability to actually service you as full stack becomes extremely synergetic. Right? So that's how we have looked at the entire debt life cycle of a end customer.
Technology foundations services are similar or same, or how is it?
The technology foundations are the same, but from a data governance perspective, all of them operate independently.
Okay.
That is by design, right? So
Hmm.
every company should have its own fiduciary responsibility and duty of care as far as InfoSec risk is concerned, data is concerned, data localization is concerned,
Right.
right? So that is something which is completely separate for the company, right? But a lot of leverage and operating leverage comes in as far as the unified API is concerned. That if you take one part of a UB product, how do we enable the next product, the next product, the next product much more seamlessly
Okay.
than if you had to integrate with so many platforms one on one?
Give us a glimpse into the technology team that you have, because all this definitely calls for a lot of technology.
We made significant investment. That's our largest investment over the last 5 years across engineering, product, delivery, design, and AI. So our AI org, which is Uverse, we are over 100 odd people.
Okay.
Very focused on building the last mile AI capability. On across the UB group, we have close to 600 people across our engineering, product, design org. So overall, 700 odd people in our tech org.
Okay.
Investing significantly not only for where our customers are today, but also for the future. And plus, now we have made investments to support our expansion outside India. We are in Southeast Asia, we are in Middle East. We are
Okay.
growing very well in the Middle East. So we are making big and significant investments even on our tech org as far as our Middle East expansion is concerned.
Oh, that's interesting. When did you start your expansion outside India?
Started 2 years back, and we have been pleasantly surprised in terms of how banking in all of these markets are really going to evolve, because some of the core themes in every market we are entering is the same. The cost of origination is going up for banks. Customers are more loyal to storefronts where they are actually spending time. So they might be spending time on Instagram, they might be spending time on payment app, they might be spending time on a food delivery app. So
Right.
how do you embed yourself as a bank more and more across the surfaces, right? And third is the entire interoperability of a customer. So the regulator is obviously on the side of the customer, which means that they are actually giving that choice to the customer of how a customer should actually avail service from a service provider, which in this case might be a bank or might be an NBFI, right?
Right.
And if they don't want to, right, they can actually withhold their consent of data which they have shared. We're seeing that in India with DPDP, we see that in other provisions. And if a customer decides to leave you, you have to actually allow that customer to exit. So the load barriers are going away, prepayment penalties are going away. Your ask of handing over all the collateral documents to the customer is being made more stringent,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which means that the real balance of power is going to be on the end customer, and they will decide more and more which is their right choice of service provider is concerned as far as banking and financing is concerned.
Sounds good. You describe your technology team. What does your compliance team look like?
Massive investment in our infosec and compliance. As I said, and I keep telling this internally, we are actually in the securities business, right? Our clients trust us immensely, right?
Right.
And given that we work with over 200 banks and NBFI and fintechs here in India itself and now in other markets. I think that has been a very, very key cornerstone for us, right? Because the reason why we had to do it is because our customers are regulated and we are playing a fiduciary role for them, right? So that trust layer is very, very important, and you have to be compliant by design, right? And then compliance today has become much more overarching, right? With data privacy,
exactly.
with infosec. How do you use AI more on infosec side? You're seeing a lot of global currently reset happening, so you have to also be very, very clear on how you are actually thinking of localization, how you're thinking of being completely cloud agnostic. So by design, last point which I'll share, we were very clear 3 years back when we were investing in our architecture that we will be cloud neutral. So we will not wed ourselves to one service provider. It will largely depend on what our choice of customer is. They want us to deploy on service provider A, B, C. They want us to deploy on multi-cloud, private cloud. They want us to deploy on-prem. So all of that was designed from a compliance and architecture perspective to service our clients.
So if I may summarize, I think you have a very balanced approach where you're using AI as an engine, you're using compliance to make sure that your brakes, I think you are intelligently steering into the right kind of markets, business segments. That whole balance is probably giving this whole group the strength to move ahead and serve the industry and to serve the customers.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.